Erika Lowery, welcome to the Map Forward podcast. It is such a pleasure
Thank
to have
you.
you here, lovely. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you, everybody, by FAF Coffees, green bean suppliers of some of the finest and most sustainably produced Brazilian specialty coffee. Head to fafbrazil.com and contact Felipe Croce on Instagram, or you can email him at Felipe Croce at fafcoffees.com. Links are in the show notes below. Check it all out. We love their coffee. We use it for Elixir. And today we have Erika Lowery joining us on the Map Forward podcast from Coffee Fest. And this, my dear, is going to be a great conversation. After all the interesting things that were required to make it happen. But welcome. And I tell you why I was so keen to have a conversation with you. I know that you think, oh, but I'm not so interesting and who wants to hear from me? And you said that a couple of times off air. I constantly get asked by people, what do I do if I don't want to have a long-term career as a barista or a roaster and I don't want to be a grain buyer? What can I do in specialty coffee? And you have been in specialty coffee for like 20 years, is it? 25 years?
25 years.
Wow. Does that feel like it's been 25 years?
No, it feels like a blink.
Yeah, wow. Wow. And you are the director, the show director for Coffee Fest.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means that I get to oversee the daily operation of Coffee Fest, facilitate our now 4 events this year. It'll be the first year we have 4 events. And so I like to say that my job is to bring together the experts. Mm-hmm. We are not the experts, but we know them all. We've been in this industry for a long time with a lot of the same people. A lot of people have been around our show for 20 plus years. And so when people come in and are excited about getting in the industry and they don't know what they want to do, we know who we connect them with to have those conversations and explore those opportunities. And we get people to just call our office and ask us random questions. And we can say, hey, email this person, they'll help you out. And that person always does. So we just get to be the facilitators of a really, really fun industry and a lot of fantastic individuals.
That sounds like a dream job. It really does sound like a dream job, just because, I mean, I'm a connector as well. So I see how much fun it is to watch people who should be around each other be around each other. Mm-hmm. And it's just fun watching that magical spark just happen, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you get to where you are? What was the path?
Well, the crazy thing is, you said I've been in this industry for 25 years. And when I said that out loud and how long it's been, I have a daughter right now who is the age I was when I started in coffee, which I don't know that I realized until I said that out loud.
That's mind-blowing.
So I actually started on a school project when I was 17 years old and tried to hang a poster in a coffee shop and gave my spiel. And the guy said, we don't hang posters, but do you want a job?
Is that really what he said?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And the rest is history. And it was just that one thing evolved to another. The founders of Coffee Fest had asked me to help out back in, I think, 1993 with their show, just as a temporary worker, and fell in love with them, fell in love with the show. And the rest was history as it just evolved around life and in different roles. And, through that, I've just been around the show for so long. That's why I love it, because I've been in every piece of it. I've been a registration worker, an MC, taught classes, been an exhibitor. So I feel like I've been on all sides, so it makes it easy to do this.
Did you know, so you'd worked in a cafe. Did you know that actually being behind the bar wasn't your thing? It was mostly going to be like event coordination and leading people?
No, never. I loved it. I loved it for years and years. Yeah. And even after working on wholesale and startup, shortly after I got married, went back and did it for a while before we had kids. And it's a people job. It's similar to what I do now. You connect with people. So that piece of it was always fulfilling enough for me. But obviously, as opportunities presented themselves, I didn't realize the bug that I had until I got a taste of it and started doing things on a bigger scale, which is kind of fun. And it's what I tell people now is you never know what your end place will be. You just keep taking the steps through the journey and you don't know where it's going to end up.
So you had no like trajectory that said, "Oh, I want to end up doing XYZ. That's where I'm headed. That's what I want to do." Yeah, wow. Wow. So,
It just kind of evolved.
okay, so did you go to school to study anything?
I have a degree in business, but not specifically event planning or event management by any
Yeah,
means.
how interesting. This is the thing I love about our industry is the barrier to entry is low enough that you can get in, and then once you're
Mhm.
here, you can just shoot off into a million different places based on what your passions are.
Absolutely.
Do you find that the people around you in Coffee Fest have similar kinds of stories?
I would say in a lot of ways. Yeah, we work with a lot of people that have been, and it's like any other industry where people come and go. They may be a part of something and then take time off, have kids, explore another
Right.
industry, and they kind of find their way back. They may have been a wholesale, rep for a company, tried something else out, come back, and then end up opening a cafe. Um, we see a lot of different journeys, and it's exciting. But I always say it's probably the most friendly industry I've ever come across because even when you have competition, it's not cutthroat competition. It's how can I help you out, and who can I connect you with. Or if you're starting a cafe, yeah, there's 10 great roasters within driving radius, but whose personality are you going to mesh with? Who are you going to meet with that you want to have a partnership with? So it's not, there's so much opportunity for everybody that people are really friendly in helping people build businesses, which is why we're still in business and why we've been able to thrive as we have for the last 25 years.
It's the interesting thing that I experienced at Coffee Fest last year. So I went to my first LA one last year, and I gotta say I was really surprised. I hope you don't get offended by that. Um, I went there. I was surprised because I went there to just see who I could catch up with, and I was shocked by the fact that when I left there, I hadn't anticipated going to do business. I just thought it would be a place to see everyone. That,
Mm-hmm.
like I could go and catch up
Yeah.
with friends and blah, blah, blah. I left there and I'm still reaping the rewards of the business that I did there. And that really surprised me. I hadn't known what to expect. Coffee Fest is not SCA. SCA is like daunting and scary as fuck. It's one of those things of like, for most people, they tell me, when am I going to get comfortable going to, or they ask me, when am I going to get comfortable going to SCA? And that expo's no joke. Like there's a lot
Mhm.
of people there. And so it was
Yeah.
interesting to see that what I was experiencing, and I'm not talking shit about expo or anything, but it's a different experience.
It's
They're
completely different.
completely different events.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked
And
by
I
that.
think I think there's two things that really I'd say we kind of hang our hat on, or we used to look at it as, we've always been friendly competition. We've always supported each other, but I've really come to see that there are two completely different places in the
Oh, yeah.
industry for both of us. And I had spoke with another person on a podcast actually right before our Indianapolis show, and he said, how I describe Coffee Fest, and it warmed my heart because I'm like, gosh, that's what we come to work every day to do. Is he goes, you're accessible,
Right.
you're approachable, and you're accessible, and we're the non-scary, whether it be place to start or place to, come and not be afraid to ask stupid
Mm-hmm.
questions or not understand things. That's fine because hopefully once you come for that, you're surprised in the depth of education you can
Oh,
get.
yeah.
And we're okay with that.
That was something that was shocking to me. Well, not shocking, it was surprising to me because I went there and found it super approachable. And I found that the people who had come with me, so I had taken some newbie clients, new into the industry, who had wanted to go to Coffee Fest, no, SCA. They had wanted to go to SCA, found it rather intimidating. And so we said, let's go to Coffee Fest, and you can get a vibe for what it feels like to go to a coffee event. And damn, did they have a good time. And that was what was shocking to me. It's like, it just seemed approachable to everybody. And I know that we're going on a little bit about Coffee Fest, but the reason I want to talk about Coffee Fest is because I know that there are a lot of people who don't go to these events because they're intimidated by them. And I want to welcome people into the networking sphere because they get so nervous about, do I have a place in that? And right now I'm on this big assertiveness push. We're about to do an event, a full day workshop in Australia, assertiveness training for the hospitality industry. And so you can't put people in a situation where they can be assertive if they stay away from everybody. And I think that working people into being more comfortable around each other is always going to help people feel more comfortable to practice assertiveness.
And I would say in hindsight, and the Halburn family and the people that founded this event years ago would agree with me. I think the only mistake we made that we didn't know was a mistake at the time, because specialty coffee didn't exist when we started, is having fest in the name makes it appear like a festival or a consumer event. So, but when you're established for this long, to go through a name change is a big scary thing, and we would have kept it. We would have liked to have evolved, because now there's so many coffee festivals that there's some brand confusion, and it's hard to differentiate. So it's like finding that place between casual, fun, non-business environment, consumer-based, and, big, huge, overwhelming expo. We fall in the middle, but it's to get that message out is kind of probably our biggest challenge.
I'm not... and I'm sure nobody's going to be shocked by this, I'm not a latte art competition person at all. I don't. I'm happy to support them, and more power to you if you're huge into latte art. But when we came up through my career in Australia, you didn't enter latte art competitions, and we didn't really have that many of them. And so I was pleasantly surprised to see that I could go to Coffee Fest and go and say hi to my friends that were competing and, cheer them on a little bit, but then go into the show part of it, and then go and do hardcore business for a couple of hours, and then I could go socialize. So for anyone who's listening to this thinking, should I go to any of these kinds of events? Yes, if this is a really great place to start. If you're going to LA, I'm going to be there. Come and say hello to me. I'm the person with the red lipstick on and tattoos. You can't miss me, and I've got the Aussie accent.
Well, don't say that, tattoos. It's Coffee Fest. I think you're going to blend in just fine. I don't think that's a big disclaimer.
Yeah, but they go together. But actually, it's LA, so everyone who's got tattoos has got red lipstick. I'm probably the only one.
That must be why I can't pull off red lipstick. Now I know.
I'll be the one with the Aussie accent. So there'll be few people who have red lipstick, tattoos, and an Aussie accent. If you can find that.
If you could wear those headphones too, that would be helpful.
Okay, perfect. That's how everyone's going to recognize who I am. You're so right. But yeah, come and say hello. Everyone in the team from Coffee Fest.
We should have a meet and greet hour with you at the show.
Yeah, totally. I'm happy to do that.
Let's broadcast it. Figure out a time and a place, and we'll have you there. And
sure.
Can have a meetup.
Just if it encourages people to come out and just feel safer exploring something like this for the first time. And I remember when I was a puppy barista, how fucking terrified I was of going to anything that happened in the industry. And I always thought that one day, if I ever was in a position to help people feel more comfortable in
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of situations, that I would find a way to do it, because networking is terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people feel this, the fraud. They feel like they're a fraud in an industry because they haven't been doing it for so long. And do I really belong here and all that kind of thing? Yes, you belong here. And yes, the only way that you're going to feel more comfortable being here is by getting out there and
Mm-hmm.
mingling among people. And even if you don't know anyone, you'll know me. So come find
Well,
me
and everybody
somewhere.
has something to offer. I mean, I'd been in the industry over 15 years and thought that I didn't know anything because I wasn't a Q grader. I mean, it's like we have
Yeah.
these, we put these things on ourselves that other people don't, and everybody has a story. And once you get sharing with them, they guarantee you. That's why our networking luncheon and different things, we're trying to create more of those places at our show that are more organized networking, because business owners can learn from business owners. That's the best place for them to share
Mm.
ideas in a space where someone could say, hey, I tried that. I spent a lot of money on this activity or something, and it totally bombed. So if you're going to do it, change this. Or, hey, here's something creative that we learned from a customer that we did and it worked great. There's just so many ways to, we get a lot of feedback that the best conversations happen off the show floor. You
Yeah.
know, have them on the show floor, but then the people you run into in the lobby hotel and the people that you run into at the reception are when the really great connections happen. So,
And the people that are there that are exhibiting, they're there because they want to meet people, not just that they
mm-hmm,
want to sell stuff. Like, sure, they
right.
want to do business, but they want to meet people. They're there and they've put in all this money and effort, and they may as well make new connections while they're there. You don't have to buy anything from them, and you may not even know when they're going to come in handy. But just walking up to people and saying hi is a really great way to start that kind of, how do I meet people in the coffee industry journey.
Yep. Yep. And they are there for that reason. I mean, they are there. We have a lot of people that exhibit solely for the purpose to meet their end user.
Yeah.
They're there to talk to the people that are using their products. So they want to hear from you far more than they want to tell you what, the most current syrup flavor is that they're launching,
Yeah.
or, their newest roast profile. They want to know from their customers how they can serve this industry better.
What do you get out of, like, what's your greatest satisfaction when the shows are happening? What do you love watching?
Well, I will tell you, every show, and I can't even count, we've had 86 shows, and I've probably done 90% of
Yeah,
them.
wow.
And every day we go to open the doors, I am convinced that no one will show up.
Oh, I know. I know that. Oh, yeah.
Um, and gosh, what I feel like there's so many. Um, I think, we go in, we set up, it's this whirlwind. You open the doors, people come, it's busy. And then I think the second day when I'm there at, 7 in the morning, I have a cup of coffee and I'm just walking the aisles and I see companies that have been there forever, companies that were startups with us that have now grown, all these new companies that have never been with us before. And I walk through and no one's there and no one's talking.
Mm,
And I think my heart just says, oh, we're really doing something.
mm.
We're doing something for everyone that has, purchased this booth space, for everyone that has invested in us, and for the people that are going to walk through the door. I think it's those moments that I'm, really, really feel like we're doing our job. And the people that every show, someone will come up to me and say, I have been coming for 9 years and you have been here all 9 years. But they'll say, but we still keep coming back because without you, not me, Coffee Fest, without Coffee Fest and the skills it taught us, we wouldn't have survived the recession. We wouldn't still be
Wow.
here. We wouldn't have 3 locations. And every show, someone shares a testimony like that. And I'm like, dang, we did what we set out to do.
Yeah, wow. That unto itself must be hugely gratifying personally for you.
Right. Because I've been a part of the journey. I'm not responsible for
Well, it's
it.
a team that puts it together, right?
But if I at least have been along for the ride, whether it was, with, you know, in the very beginning when they decided this coffee thing could be something in the early 90s, and lo and behold, it was. Or, there's just been a lot of different turning points where, will we survive the recession if our whole industry's gone?
Yeah.
It's been a wild ride, but we've stayed, regardless of who's at the helm and who's been organizing or who's been selling or who's been picking locations, we've stayed true to our hearts. We've stayed true to the industry that we love. And I truly believe that's why we are still here and connecting with the people we do.
Because there's a whole like satellite thing going on with Coffee Fest. There's not just the trade show itself, but there's a whole education platform, right?
Yeah, so we launched something this year that it's in its very infant stages. That's we've got some great ideas coming, down the pipe to how to develop it. But it's always bothered me that we're only accessible 3, maybe 4 times a year.
Right.
Because for some people, they'll say, I'm opening in 3 months and I needed to get at a show, and they had no resources, or they were Googling and just throwing money at things that may or may not have been worth their investment. So we did launch Coffee Fest 365, which is an online education platform. We've provided a handful of our classes, some of our seminars, and then there's a package that people can buy. And their stuff as low as, I think, $29, where you can download a training video and do training with your staff, or watch it for different things. My goal is down the road to, again, start partnering more with people that are the experts in this industry. There are people that do video really well and do training really well, and they're at our show. So how can we make these things accessible, kind of with our seal of approval behind it, and saying, yep, we believe in this. These are people we have worked with. This is a successful company. Here's our, testimonies from our attendees, and then get people to kind of, again, how can we be the vehicle year round and not just the vehicle in 4 cities a year?
So you guys are looking to have as big a platform for education as you are for trade?
It's always been 50-50.
Wow.
So I think we have 180 hours of education. That's why we've always split the show floor and do education morning, trade show in the afternoon, because we don't want to, 1, our exhibitors teach our classes, and 2, we don't want to compete for the attendees' time.
That's really smart.
But you can take 16 classes a day for free at our show.
What are the kind of classes?
Anything from management, like managerial classes, what managers need to know, theft, employee morale.
Wait, step back. Theft,
like how to prevent employee theft.
Jeez, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. How to keep your employees, how to, there's some like to roast or not to roast. I mean, am I a cafe? Do I get into roasting? Do I partner with a roaster? There's a couple taught by green importers. There's packaging. I mean, honestly, anything you can think of. We survey our attendees every year, and we come back with a list, and then we source those topics to fill those spots for what people want to hear.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we've started breaking it into different tracks, whether it's roasting, business services, marketing. I think there's social media class. I mean, they change every show, but we had such a demand for education that not only do we do the 50-minute sessions in the morning, like every hour on the hour, but we actually now have 2 education hubs on the show floor. So you can drop in for 30-minute speed sessions on drink trends, or we're launching a co-located one in LA that has half the sessions are restaurant focused and half are coffee focused, but how the 2 industries come together. So it may be, purchasing equipment for your restaurant, or because we're with the restaurant show, we want to start blending those audiences more instead of keeping them separate. So it could be, anything you can think of that would be either a business service, coffee specific, tea tasting, integrating tea, not being fearful of choosing tea for your customers and how to brew it, maintenancing equipment, you name it, you'll find it.
And is Coffee Fest specialty coffee focused, or is it everything coffee focused?
Define specialty coffee.
Great
I think we've always, I think I'm a girl from the 90s. Okay, we didn't use thermometers and
Same,
wipe
same.
our portafilter. I mean, come on. I am old school. So I try to remove myself from the whole third, fourth, fifth wave. Um, we're specialty coffee, in the sense of definitely, seed to cup, partnering with farmers, being accountable, making great coffee, getting the right training. And that's why it's great to partner with the restaurant shows now, because restaurant has gone, if you don't have specialty coffee,
Yeah,
good
right.
coffee, not food service coffee, you're missing the mark
Yeah, yeah.
with your customer. So I wouldn't say we get caught up in so coffee centric that we say it's all about coffee and you shouldn't serve a pastry, or you should, because that's old school thinking too. There's places for those people. There will always be the people that come, and we have a great roaster here in Tacoma. You can get a cup of coffee there.
Yep.
That is it. Nothing. Fantastic. He'll get a lot from our show, but we're not eliminating anybody that doesn't fit that.
Yep.
So we don't want to be snooty specialty coffee. We want to be friendly specialty coffee.
Approachable,
Right.
all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And that, I got to tell you, you deliver on that, because that was, I think, the thing that made it so fun. Expo is great. SCA Expo is great, but it is intense.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those, you've got to have a game plan. You're not necessarily going to, like, you're there to do like hardcore serious business, to the point where there's workshops going. Like, I'm there running workshops with that side of things. So it's a stressful time for me when I do that kind of thing.
And I think what they do really well, because they have the association, is they do great at certification.
Yeah. Okay.
We toyed around with that for a while. We do hands-on training and different things, but it's not backed by a big association that has spent the time and money and
Right.
energy and creates the labs and does all this. And they are great at it. And in a lot of ways, we wouldn't be where we are without them and what they're doing for the industry. And I hope we would do the same for them, because we're all serving the same people.
Right. So, but in different ways from what I see. Like,
Completely different.
yeah. And I think that you're more approachable to the people who are just starting out as well. That's the other thing that I really enjoyed about it. I was speaking to, the podcast was already out when I went to the LA Coffee Fest last year, and some people recognized my voice, not me.
I get that a lot.
And they were like, "Oh, we've been listening to your podcast, and we're not actually in coffee yet, but we're hoping to get into coffee, and we're here to see what it's like." And I'm thinking, I'm so glad they came here, because I think going to SCA is just, it's no joke. Like, if the first access you get to the industry is going to SCA Expo, I think it could mean that you won't go into the industry. And I have seen that happen. People have just felt so intimidated by it. But there's a different kind of vendor that is at Coffee Fest. Like, the kinds of vendors you're going to get at Coffee Fest, and this was the other thing that I really liked. I didn't see many of the same vendors at Coffee Fest as I see at SCA. And the thing that gave me room to do was explore stuff that I'd never explored at SCA. And I found it more beneficial, because, like, I'm still dealing with a lot of those vendors now. Whereas the people who I dealt with it in SCA, it comes back to that intimidating kind of thing. There's just so many fucking people there at that time that everyone's fighting for that attention. And I was, this is going to sound really shit, and I'm really sorry, but I was just so shocked at how fun it was coming to Coffee Fest. In all fairness, I'd not been before, and I didn't know what to expect, and that's why I was shocked. Because usually when you go to something called Coffee Fest, you're like, wow, this is just going to be another one of those pompous, everyone thinks that they're like too cool for school kinds of things. And it wasn't at all. So,
well, then we've done our job, and you're working with us.
Yeah.
You're going to walk the show floor There's 5 people that run this show,
Is it
and
really only
you will.
5 people?
Yes, there are
Wow.
5. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
impressive, lady.
So, and you will see us. We will be the ones running around answering questions in the trenches with the people that are there, because how else can we run an event if we're not right there
On the
with it?
floor.
So that's, yep. And that's why we love what we do. The other thing, when you said accessible or, approachable, the other thing is that's why people have actually given us a hard time on why it's so cheap. I'm going to say cheap because that's what people say to us,
Yeah.
to go to Coffee Fest. And I mean, on site, it's $75, but anytime before that, you can go for 15, 30, 60.
Yep.
We want people to bring their team. I want you to feel good about, I have 3 people that work for me. And I think if we took them to this show, they'd get really excited and
Yeah.
maybe have a career or stay with us and stay at the cafe and evolve their role. That's a no-brainer. If you can bring your team to experience something and invest in them for as much as $60 and let them take all the free classes. So that's important for us, that we're not
Whose
alienating anybody.
whose brainchild was this?
So I don't know if you're familiar at all. The Vita Seattle, Taste of Tacoma. There's some really large events in the Seattle area
Okay.
that Al Silverman and his family started. I
Okay.
should know what year. He just actually was inducted to the, I think, Festival Hall of Fame or something.
Uh-huh.
Al, I don't know if you're 90. I'd be in his
What?
late 80s. And he's phenomenal. He was a big foodie, grew up in New York, owned a restaurant, like the greatest guy. Well, he and his family started this event planning business, and maybe late 80s had this, crazy brainchild, or very early 90s, that this coffee thing was going to be something. And they had a gentleman that worked for him named David Halbrin, and he said, well, I'll run with it. Let's add this other event. And so in 1992, they launched it in Seattle, and David Halbrin and his now wife, Marnie, started this baby, and they just ran with it. And the first show in 1992, there was espresso machines, espresso. There was no milk. There was no flavoring. Da Vinci Syrups was there, and they wore black tuxedos and just gave samples of syrup in cups, because there was no seltzer water. There was no, like, if you didn't drink straight espresso, I don't even know what other vendors were there. Maybe some packaging people. And from there, it just went gangbusters. And they
What a great
started, I
story.
think, pretty out of the gate with this business seminar that was an all-day class. And they took you through writing a business plan, drafting up a lease, picking locations, making your menu, training your staff. And it was this all-day crash course. And they did it for years, and it worked really, really well. And then they just started rotating it around the country, and it just
And then you
grew.
showed up.
Yeah, I showed up. I was an exhibitor in 1993.
Who are you exhibiting for?
A coffee roaster out of Gig Harbor, Washington, called Austin Chase. So, yeah, and it
And
just evolved.
and then it was
Crazy.
love at first sight, kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
it's too fun to leave. I mean, I left, went to college, left, got married, left, had kids, and I just keep coming back.
And now you're running the show.
Yep. So,
Does it feel like family? I know there's only 5 of you there, but the whole thing is such a big operation.
it is, but it only works because it's family. I mean, for
Yeah.
years it was run by a family, and we recently changed hands about 2.5 years ago. We were sold to Clarion Events out of the UK, and the Halbrins retired, which is fantastic. But the heart of the company and the team stayed together, and I think that's a big piece of it. But the fun part of that is we get to explore other shows. So now that's why we're with the restaurant show and the international restaurant show, and seeing how all these new beverages. And I mean, who would have known that a portion of our booze would be kombucha?
Yeah, well, you just
We
go to
wouldn't have
Whole
known that
Foods now.
years. I mean, it's crazy. So it went from pure espresso to everything you need in a
Yeah,
cafe.
but the cafe itself has evolved so much these days,
Oh,
hasn't it?
so much. Well, we talked about that years ago, modeling it on what Australia was doing with cafes.
Yeah, it's starting to happen. You can see it
Yeah.
evolving now. I there's a cafe here in San Diego, that's just recently open, and the fit out looks like it's a good few $1 million just
Yeah.
for the fit out.
Yep. Yep.
And you can see this is the direction, the gentrification of specialty coffee, which is so ironic because most places think that, you know, when a specialty coffee shop goes into your neighborhood, it's going to gentrify the neighborhood. But I feel like specialty coffee in the US itself is getting gentrified from Australian cafes.
Yep.
Which
Yep.
is really strange. And it's going to be interesting to watch how that changes the way that shows like Coffee Fest and I don't know that it'll affect SCA as much, because I think that you're more about the actual running of the business, whereas SCA is more about the running of the businesses behind the businesses.
Well, and they're far more international. I mean, you look at, they have the relationships with the growers and the countries and the farmers and the importers, which we have that represented, but not to the country level, because we're not going to bring in these pavilions and say, yeah, you're going to find, who you're going to sell your whole next year's coffee supply to. So it's just, to each their own. And they, like you said, they all have a place. And what I like about us as being a team of 5 and independent is you came out tomorrow with this fantastic idea. It's not, let's sit on it and talk to the board. It's like, hey, you guys want to do this? Does this make sense? Is this what our customer wants? And we can, make adjustments really quickly. So if something works or doesn't work in LA, we can adjust it by next year in New York.
So where are you doing the shows now? There's LA, there's New York, there is...
Well, we're launching a Pacific Northwest show, which will be the 4th show in Tacoma, Washington, right where our office is based.
That must be nice.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to call it PNW because we would like to see it rotate between Portland, Seattle, and Tacoma. Okay. So we left Seattle quite a few years ago when the SCA was parked there for a couple of years because it was the same market. And we do share some exhibitors, and we thought, let's take the opportunity to bounce around. So we went down to Portland. So we feel like these 3 markets kind of share a lot. So that's why we're calling it PNW. Then New York. Next year, we're back in Chicago. And then LA will rotate to Anaheim next year.
Yeah, right. Did you do it in Anaheim once before?
A couple years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a great show.
I was there at that one. That was the very first Coffee Fest I had ever gone to. And then, okay. So my memory does serve me right. Chicago sounds like it would be a fucking riot.
Chicago is probably my absolute favorite city.
I can imagine. It's such a beautiful city.
It's beautiful. There's just everything about it is fantastic.
Here comes the train for anybody that's listening.
Out there.
I guess that thing about Chicago is the moment you arrive there and you walk around a little bit, you realize like this is a very considered city. This is one of those cities that looks like it has been built to think about the people that are inhabiting it. And then you find out, well, the city burnt to the ground. The whole thing burnt to the ground. And so they had to rebuild the whole thing, and they thought about it this time.
Anywhere you have to walk all the way down Navy Pier to go to your office for the day, I'm okay with.
I would like that. I would really, really like that. And it's just a beautiful city, especially in spring and summer.
In June. We used to do it in February. Not so fun.
June
is much.
Tits off kind of weather.
Yeah.
I want to take a little bit of a turn here and ask you something that I didn't think I would be talking about with you, but you mentioned Portland, and you mentioned that you were going to do a show in Portland. Are you aware of what's going on in Portland at the moment with regards to all the crazy political riots and stuff or things that are going on down there?
My world's this big.
Okay.
So,
you have kids, right?
Yes.
So it revolves around that.
I don't leave. If it doesn't involve lacrosse, cheer, or graduating high school this year, I do not have time in my brain for it.
You have a child old enough to graduate high school?
Yeah, my daughter's graduating this year. That's when I started in coffee. She's 17.
Some amazing genes.
Thank you. It's fun.
You look incredible for someone who has a child that's 17.
15 and 17.
Wow, good job. Good job.
I haven't aged
Um,
too much yet.
you doing cracking job. Um, I've got to ask you, as the person who's running the show, and I'm thinking about this because SEA is taking Expo to Portland next year. Um, does it concern you? And you should probably look into it if you haven't heard about what's going on.
Absolutely.
Um, there is a bunch of like super left wing riots and stuff that go on over there, and the governor has told the governor is the chief of police, and the chief of police has told the police force that if there's violence, that the police are not to engage. And without us getting super political about it, and I have far too many opinions about this particular subject because, you know, the alt left and the alt right are like the clusterfuck of what's going on right now. But when it comes to organizing an event like this, do you have to get a landscape of what's going on in that situation?
I would say the part I like least about my job, absolute least, is site selection and city selection.
Right.
And for more reasons than that. One, we're choosing things so far out
Yeah.
that we can't even know what's going to happen in 18 months in a city.
Yep.
So we book
Yep.
18 months out.
Wow.
So it is really hard when you're looking at things, they're not even on a radar, when you pick these things.
That's intense.
Um, and so just that part, and we go off kind of the state of the industry, and is it friendly for tourism? Is it going to drive people to want to go there to learn, but also be a destination where maybe they can bring their families, or they can use it as a write-off? These are things we want to look
Yeah.
at when we're making these selections. And how many cafes are within a driving radius of the major city? So we are always looking at more so the facility and their support and their action plans and their, how are they within the city and how do they operate, and how organized are they? Because now we have to think about natural disasters. We have to think about, what if you have to cancel an event? All of these things. So as much as we really try to keep it on the radar, it's really hard to, a year and a half out, know what we're going to be up against in any city.
Does it make you have to rethink things knowing that next year is going to be an election year?
I haven't given it a ton of thought. It hasn't been a big, flux in the last couple years, something that I've noticed within our cycles, but not to say that it couldn't be.
Yeah, wow. There's so much to think about when you're running that show.
Yeah. Well, and now we're dealing with, all of small business. I mean, the state of Washington with minimum wage and what's going on here. And these are things that make or break it for our customers. So how can we help them navigate the waters? Green coffee prices are one thing, but when you're talking about labor and inventory and all these other things, how can we help them be successful? Because these are not people with millions of dollars in the bank to
Contrary to
float
what
their
everyone
business.
thinks.
They're really, a lot of people in this industry pour their retirement into opening these businesses because it's what they want to do as their career in the fun part of their life. After they've been an attorney or a, accountant or whatever it may be. There are some phenomenal companies that have great backing and great investments and can do the couple $1 million build outs, but it's really not the norm of the customers we see when we're getting, 3,000 business owners through the door. That's not the majority of them.
No. I'm trying to, through Map It Forward, I'm trying to get people to consider slowing down their rate into the industry so that they can kind of get their head around a few of the things that they need to know so that they're giving themselves a better chance at success. There's far too many people who are saying, well, fuck this, I don't want to be a barista anymore. I'm sick of getting paid minimum wage. Why don't I just go and open my own business? It can't be that hard. If this monkey of a boss can do it, surely I can do it better, right? What they're realizing is it's not fixing anything.
No.
It's not progressing our industry. It's not helping us slow down the rate of businesses that are closing within the first 2 or 3 years.
Right. And that's what we come back to all the time and what pulls on our heartstrings, because we want to set people up for success, whether that means taking a little bit longer or scrapping what you really thought. I had a guy call me a couple of years ago and he said, I really want to come to your show. I'm thinking about opening a coffee shop in Manhattan. I'm like, fantastic. Sounds like a great idea. Tell me more about it. Yeah, you should come to the show. And he goes, well, I want to do coffee. I said, great. And he goes, but we're going to roast our own beans. And I said,
no, don't do that.
Oh, it gets better. Okay. I'm like, sounds like you've made up, have you talked to me? Well, yeah, but we just don't trust the quality that anybody else will give us, so we're just going to do it ourselves. And I'm like, okay, well, those really are two separate businesses, but that's great that you're passionate about it. Well, yeah, and we're going to bake our own pastries.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. I wanted to say, are you going to mill your own flour in the back room? Because now we're getting a little crazy.
These are people who don't realize how hard this is all going to be.
Don't jump in with just evolve. Allow yourself to get your bearings and, start somewhere and get your small successes and then grow as you can. You don't need to open 3 locations at once. Open 1. Do it really, really, really well.
Yeah, for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And then crush it and open 3 more locations, 1 every year after that if you really need to.
And I think something that, you've worked with Holly a bit in our marketing department, and she's really passionate about telling the stories of Coffee Fest.
Yeah, she really is.
What are the stories? There's good ones and there's bad ones. What have we done, what have people done well at, and what have they wish they would have known? And how do we continue to tell those stories? Because our show is a story. Like you said, it feels like a family.
Yeah.
We're just one big, really, really long story. And we want to tell that.
There was a part during Coffee Fest last year where it just was so much fun. I was at the Beyond the Grind stand talking to my friends at over there. There was
Eric and Ross.
Eric and Ross. Ross is a fucking legend. And James and Jonathan. And it seemed like the place to be at that time. And it took me about an hour to get past that stand just because everyone was saying hi to everyone and high-fiving, and it was big hugs all around, and it just felt like this is what it should feel like when everybody gets together. This is what it should feel like when and I was introducing people. I'm like, these are the people you should speak to about this, and come and meet this person for this. And it's just like, then you fast forward a few months and you check in with those people and you say, look, how did things end up going after that situation? And they're like, awesome. We continue conversations with this person and this person. I've become friends with that person. And you're like, wow, that's so great. This is what you hope people take away from anything. Like, we run workshops and conferences and things like that through Map It Forward. And I'm like you, even though we'll sell out, I'm like, is anyone actually going to show up? It's just a thing. The same thing happened when I gigged in my music career. You would sell out a show and you're like, no one's coming. I swear no one's coming.
They all got other plans.
Everyone, like 300 people said, I know that they all bought tickets, but that was just because, they wanted to buy tickets. And you watch, no one's coming to the show. And my band would look at me and like, you're a fucking moron. What is wrong with you? Be like, you watch, no one's coming. And so I would go and hide in my dressing room, and then my best friend and I had a ritual. I would kind of send her out to go and check if anyone showed up, and she would always come back and say, yeah, nobody came. And of course I'd walk out and this room was full of people, and I'd just be like, can you stop with the whole self-deprecating? Like, it's bad enough if you sold no tickets, and then you'd have a reason to be like, is anyone actually going to show up and buy tickets at the door? But you've sold the thing out, for God's sake. Like, so.
And we've had shows with snowstorms. We've had shows with hurricanes. We've had you name it. The reasons you don't think people would come, but they have come.
Yeah, wow. Which is so exciting. Like, the fact that peak coffee professionals, and I think we're in a real transitionary time in our industry. I think that people are starting to realize that, and thanks to social media and podcasts and things like that, people are starting to realize that the information that they want and the human connection that can help give them that information that they want is much more accessible than they thought it was. But also, I think that people are starting to realize the smarts that I need to run a cafe and to do it properly are far more, far more than what I thought they were.
Mhm.
And I've got to go out there and learn it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not
But
just an
that's
espresso
what's going
machine.
to keep trade shows alive, though,
Yep.
because you fight that stigma. It's a trade show. When I can find it, I can find anything I need on Amazon. I can buy it. We have exhibitors that I only sell online anymore. That is true. But where do we get to sit down and have a conversation with you? They can, and that's why we've gone in the direction of partnering with as many podcasts as we can. We want people, we want to be part of these resources because we believe in them so much. But you still have to show up. There is still something to be said about meeting people face to face, shaking someone's hand, getting in front of them, and having real life connections.
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna have your business online. Your whole business is
No.
about connecting with people.
Do you think that any of that's going to change long term? Do you think that with automation, with apps, like people ordering from apps, and all that kind of stuff, do you think that digital is going to change the face of the way we as business owners are going to have to approach doing business?
I think you'd be crazy if you didn't think you would have to adjust. I don't think that means it obliterates the things we do really well, but I think you're kind of we are probably one of the only shows ever that still has a paper show guide, and as long as I am here, we will still have a paper show guide because I like holding something in my hands.
I'm the same.
But that doesn't mean you can't have an app or a dynamic floor plan or those things. That's still important, but we have to. I mean, mobile ordering is a thing. I think we can learn a lot from Starbucks. What did they do that failed? What did they do that did well?
Yeah.
Does it work for your business? Does it not? Because guess what? They have the R&D department. They have the resources to do the customer research. That may not, your Starbucks customer may not be your customer, but they have similar mindsets to your customers.
They're driving the industry.
Yeah.
Whatever anybody wants to think, Starbucks are absolutely
they're not
driving.
the enemy. They're doing a great job. I said, without them, people wouldn't pay $6 for a cup of coffee.
I still can't believe people do pay. They should be paid more, but it still shocks me that they're paying that much for a cup of coffee at the moment.
And that's why I even think the Coffee Fest 365 thing came about. That's why we're doing podcasts. That's why we've toyed with doing podcasts, live from the floor. These are things that help business owners, and we're always willing to see what they are.
Do you know, friends of mine, and shout out to the Saloom sisters, Carol and Sharon Saloom from Almond Bar in Australia. They were using Uber Eats and like a bunch of different, not a lot, but I think 2 or 3 different ordering apps that you could, and they're a really great Syrian restaurant in Sydney, super popular. They've been around for 11 years, which is huge for a restaurant to be around for that long. And so they had transitioned, keeping up with the times. They were allowing people to order delivery. So not takeaway, but you can order takeaway, but it's a dine-in, beautiful restaurant. And they recently, 2 weeks ago, decided that they were going to remove that service, that they were no longer going to allow you to have their food delivered home. And the reason they did that was because what they found was that people love eating their food but stopped coming to the restaurant. And so the app was taking a huge chunk of their profits. That was one thing, but that wasn't the most important thing to them. The part that made them choose to remove it was that community stopped.
Right.
And they wanted to see more people come back into the restaurant. They were sold out, completely booked out from the day after they did it.
That's amazing.
I get chills.
Sorry, I do too. I totally
yeah. It just makes me so excited that when you've worked that hard to build a business and you get out there and you say, listen, hey, and they made a big hoo-ha about it. Go check it out on their Instagram for anyone who's listening, at Almond Bar. They did a post, and the post was a picture of the board that they had, it was just an A-frame that they put outside the shop to say why they were no longer doing this. And they thought they were going to get some blowback. They didn't know what was going to go on from that. Now they've been all over the news because of the success.
That's fantastic.
It's really wonderful. So for anyone who's thinking, should I try the digital side of things? Should I get on board? Yeah, do it. But I think stay true to find a balance.
Yeah. Don't be tossed by the waves.
Yeah.
Don't go this way and this way. And we have a couple great teachers at the show that talk about what is the core of your business? Why did you start it? What is your mission statement? Yeah. Why are you doing this? What ambiance are you going to create? What are you really asking the questions of, if you don't know what this is, you can't launch out and do more. So instead of people put more thought into, am I going to do printed cups, not printed cups? Am I going to do this? They put more thought into that and maybe their logo and design than they do building the business blocks of, why am I getting into this? Because if you get into it because you think coffee is fun and is going to make you a lot of money, you're not going to be around very long.
Yes.
But if you do it right, there's a lot of success stories. But someone like them with the restaurant, those would be someone that we would have come speak to business owners, because look what they did. And those are stories that resonate with people that go a long way.
And, people who are new to the industry are going to show up, they're going to listen to a talk like that. And then in 5 years' time, like in that moment where they are seeing it for the first time, they're going to be projecting in their mind, God, I hope I get to that place. And then when they are in that place, they look back and they think, I'm that person for somebody else now.
Totally.
That must be super satisfying for you, to watch the progression of those people come in waves.
Yep. And that they still come. So they still tell us, which is really cool, is you hope it's being done. But when they pull you aside at the show and tell you why they still come back, and that's probably one of the hardest things, is if you look at our show and the logos stayed the same and some of the graphics stay the same now and then, when people say, well, I don't need to go more than once because it's the same show.
No, it's not.
The floor is the same. Well, you still have lines of booths. I have tried everything to mix it up and make it look different, but you're still going to have 10 by 10 booth spaces with aisles. And so don't let that perception, that isn't the reality. The format looks similar, but things change all the time. And if you don't come to experience it, you can't fully embrace that there's a lot of changes. You may just not notice it until you experience it.
And every person that I've ever taken to something like Coffee Fest has always been, thanks for making me go. I didn't know it could be that much fun. People just naturally have that kind of anxiety about going to something they've never been to before. And then when you get there, you're like, oh, actually, these people aren't as scary as I thought they were. Just getting through the door is the most intimidating part, which is I know that feeling.
And that's why I stand at the entrance opening the show floor on the first day, and it's like, all joke or say, it's not this big scary place.
Yeah.
And people have said, the scariest part is taking that step in, but once you do, you're going to experience something on the other side that you had no idea.
Yeah.
Be that exciting.
The potentiality of it is just awesome.
Well, thanks.
Do you, oh, you're welcome. Thanks for doing it. It makes that experience, especially because it travels around the country now. And so people who can't get to, other events around the world or even to SCA Expo, this is a lot of the time, from what I'm understanding from even my customers for Elixir, this is the only event they can afford to get to because it's closer to them.
And that's very intentional.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there still booths available, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
For LA, we have a handful left, and then PNW, and then all of 2020 will be online starting in LA. So
awesome.
we plan quite a ways forward.
Great. if anybody wants to get in contact with you guys to apply for a booth, I'll just contact us at Map It Forward, and I'll forward them on to you or to Holly.
Absolutely. And I think Holly gave you maybe a 50% off code or something to share with your listeners and viewers, and
100%.
share the love.
Yep. So we will be putting that in the show notes below, and we will be mentioning it in the sponsor messages at the beginning of this podcast. Not that you're a sponsor of this podcast, but in the introduction that's attached to the sponsor messages of this podcast.
I followed all that.
When it goes up.
Really, it's important.
Because this episode is sponsored by Faf Coffees, so why would you be saying that, Lee? It really does make sense when you listen to it through the headphones in your little apps. I promise. But there's a 50% off code, and we'll put it up on Instagram and through our mailing list, and everyone will get access to it. But from what I understand, now's the time. Tickets are $60 at the moment, and if you use the 50% off code, you get it for $30. But
Correct.
if you use it at the event, the tickets are $75.
Correct.
So
they go up on site.
Right. So
yep.
You'll get the tickets. It will still be 50% off, but
but you'll save more money if you do it in advance.
Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Lady, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, and I can't wait to see you when I'm in LA.
I know. I won't miss you.
I'll be the one with the tattoos, the red lips, and the Aussie accent.
Yeah.
The only one. Watch, there'll be another somebody there now. I have to figure out what my other variable is. Have a wonderful day, lady. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was wonderful talking with you.
Thanks, Erika. You're a champion, and thanks for what you do.
Thank you. You as well.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Likewise.
Bye.
Bye.